Let's take a pub crawl to the past. Everybody ready? Yeah. Okay, let's have some fun. Come on and join us. A pub crawl to the past. Some of these places have changed names. Some of the names have changed. And some are just plain gone. We'll start our crawl at the Japanese Gardens in Jungletown. This is a Sam Crawford drawing of the gardens. We don't have a picture. The Japanese garden was also nicknamed the Leaky Roof in the 1920s. It was reportedly a local hangout for the Purple Gang out of Detroit. They were interested in the area rum running operations and might have had a pickup spot for booze shipments heading to the nightclubs and speakeasies in the city.
Can everybody hear Georgie? She got her mic on. Georgie, can you turn it up?
I don't know. No, that's the best I can do. I'll try to talk louder.
That's better. Do you think your regular voice would broadcast better?
No.
Maybe she came back a little bit further if she can.
Okay. How's that? Okay. The Japanese Gardens had dancing and was probably quite the hot place to go at the time. It was also a place where wedding receptions were held, one of them being Sis and Jim Westrick in 1942. Some local folks had a band, and they played regularly there, and sometimes even took their daughter along. This house is located on the lot, although I've been told that I'm on the wrong corner. It's the southeast corner of Hathaway in South Riverside. So picture it if you can. Now if you notice in the picture, right up there, the trestle and the streetcar or the DUR car. You can see it in the background of Crawford's painting. Now there's comparison pictures. Here's when the trestle was being built, and there's an actual train on it, and it coincides with the picture, the painting. The trestle was put in so the railway could cross underneath. Apparently the cars drove on the top. Our next stop will be on up South Riverside a little bit. We're going to be across from the Diamond Crystal at the Sherman House. There's quite a crowd on the porch there. Probably know they're getting their picture taken. These people are my grandma and grandpa Beaver. These pictures were taken in 1914. And the Sherman House was a hotel, bar, and restaurant, operated by my grandfather, George Beaver. That's a Sam Crawford painting. And they rented rooms to Diamond Crystal workers and served lunches free when the workers bought a drink.
Good face.
The Sherman House was a place where men gathered to play cards, have a drink after work, or for bowling teams to stop in after bowling at Mickey Lightbody's bowling alley. Some of you might remember that, 4 lanes. Had pin setters manually. My brother Al Closs used to go and help our grandpa take out empties, fill coolers, carry out ashes from the furnace in the basement. Here's Grandpa Beaver behind the bar. Al also made the rounds with our grandpa to the other local bars for a beer. Probably check out the competition while they were at it. Here's an aerial view of the Sherman House, located right there. Probably from high up on one of the Diamond Crystal buildings. There's another high up view. Must be more recent than color. And this is an aerial view of Beaver Lumberyard parking lot. That's where the Sherman House sat. And there's where the headquarters for Beaver Lumber is now. In the late 1950s, when his health caused him to retire, Grandpa Beaver sold his liquor license to Fred Dalzin. Dalzin had a manufacturing building on South Riverside, just north of Pine River. And there's the building. There's another aerial view, 1949. Another one. Fred Dalzin renovated his manufacturing building and turned it into the St. Clair Lanes. You can see along there the Budweiser truck delivering beer to Westrick's Beer Place. A little closer view. He hired Fred and Margaret Manroe to operate the bowling alley and bar and snack bar for him. Inside the St. Clair River Lanes, March 26, 1961, the St. Clair Police and Fire Departments bowling against one another for a fun time. In front is Chief John McDonald and Fire Chief Art Bodat. Art's son Bill in the background, and I think this is Bill Cedar. Yeah. In the background, you can see their faces. Ernie Gallagher, Bill Cedar, Roy Team, Cal Westrick, and Bill Bodat. Later, and still to this day, it's known as the Voyager and Bowling Lanes. In 1966, it was purchased and ran by Jerry Silvas, currently owned by Mike Laporte, former manager of the inn. Now let's go around the corner on Clinton to our next stop, the Farmer's Home, or the Larry Murphy Inn. As you can see, this is the front entrance now, so this is taken from a side street. Originally, it was the farmer's home dating back to 1836. The farmers came to town with their produce to have it shipped to market. The hotel guests could stable their horses while they stayed at the hotel. This was an ad in one of the phone directories, 1899 to 1900. Leading Hotel of St. Clair, John Elspeth. The Union Brewery was located behind the farmer's home, and in 1883, this advertisement said they had fresh beer always on draft. This is the same picture. This is the original picture. The other was the Sam Crawford drawing. And right there is a little boy on crutches. He was 3 years old, and that's my Grandpa Beaver. And that's how he walked with one leg shorter than the other. And that's his dad with us. These were in the directory 1899 to 1900. We thought it was funny because we don't know what sample rooms are, but you notice it's probably all the bars. I don't think they gave free samples, but who knows. In 1901, the Schaefers bought the farmer's home. This is Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer's wedding picture. In 1902, a Brunswick bar was installed at the hotel. Serving alcohol may be why the 2 front doors can be seen in the hotel. And this ad is from 1907. Maybe they need the 2 doors to get the big bar in. This is Mrs. Sissy Schaefer. After Mr. Schaefer passed, his widow Sissy and her daughter Latona operated the bar and hotel on their own when her husband had died. They rented rooms to out-of-town workers, and they were known as Sissy's Boys. She took good care of them, but her one rule was no women upstairs. This is her picture behind the bar from an article in the newspaper. Latona Schaefer sold it to Larry Murphy in 1957. A friend remembered Larry Murphy and his family living up on North River Road. She said they had cottages on stilts to rent. Maybe some of you remember them. I don't. Mr. Murphy passed away in 1975, but his wife ran it for another 10 years. It was bought by the Sabatkas and Jim and Honey Smith in 1985. They did extensive renovations, reducing the number of rooms from 11 to 7. And they also added the front porch. And this is how the rooms look. They haven't really changed a lot, apparently. In 1992, it was sold to the Allisons, who sold it in 2009 to the current owners, the Brunhuber family. I may be pronouncing their name wrong, I'm not sure. Now let's go across the street and down a little to Engels. Engels, Riverside, and LaCroix. The place was originally built as a family home for the Werner family. The name Riverside came from the fact that the original Engels Bar was on Front Street on the Riverside at the site of the Voyager. Mert and Earl Engels were the barkeepers in the 1950s. It was a nice neighborhood bar where you're likely to see your mailman bellied up for a cold one after his route's finished. You can play the jukebox 2 for $1 back then, listen to some rock and roll, country, big bands, grab a burger and a bowl of chili. Gleams delivered meat there early in the morning, and I heard Mert and Earl weren't exactly morning people. After Mert and Earl retired, Ann Tickner from Marine City bought the bar and ran it for a few years. Then Ed LaCroix became the owner, and it's now LaCroix's Riverside, or the Slide as it's affectionately known. There's some pictures of a few folks from Burkhardt. I don't have names. They brought them in at the last minute, so we didn't get time to put names on everybody.
Did I put them in the wrong spot?
Yep. That's okay.
Fast forward, Steve.
These are 3 bartenders from Burkhardt and their Christmas party. When Ed passed away rather suddenly, his 2 daughters, Shelley and Sheila, took over and are operating it admirably. Now let's go downtown to Lee's Bar on J Street. Listed under sample rooms in 1907 directory, the bar was listed as Simpson and Koenig, 115 J Street. Take a look at the view because you can see the horse and buggies and you're looking down toward the river there. That's how it looked when it was Simpson and Koenig, another old picture by Sam Crawford. I believe it says 1912 on the bottom of the picture.
Yep.
Notice there's no bar stools? Then they had to put their foot on the brass rail and stand up.
Or lean.
Arlene, right. Sam Crawford later painted the same bar when it was called Lee's, and it was nicknamed the Snake Pit. Now they've got some stools. I don't think they're the same guys.
You never know.
They were standing there waiting for their chairs.
Yeah, right. In the 1940s, it was still in the middle of the block with a dry cleaner and a bakery on one side and a shoe repair on the other. One story I heard from someone who lived upstairs over the shoe shop told of seeing a wife chasing her husband out of Lee's while beating him over the head with her high heel shoe.
That was my mom.
Well, he went home and got a gun. However, he happened to be too drunk to shoot it, or it might have misfired, luckily for all concerned. I think this might be the little girl that told me the story, which is Betty Fenner, collecting tickets back here. As a little boy, Ron Brenner was occasionally taken to Lee's with a relative who was supposed to be babysitting. When his mother returned, he never could figure out how she knew where he had been. Could have been his orange pop mustache? Seemed like kids were always given orange pop while waiting for Dad at the bar. And there's little Ron.
Here tonight.
There's a bank on the corner.
Mike Mullane shared a story about his grandparents that took place during Prohibition. It seems Sherwood Lee's wife Gladys was driving her Model T over the Pine River Bridge and saw the feds talking to Sherwood. She jumped out of her car, grabbed her tire iron, and proceeded to beat on the feds with it. And there's her Model T in the bridge. This is a building that was next to the Sherman House. I think it says Shaw's Grocery on it. And Sherwood Lee also was reportedly connected to the Purple Gang. This postcard was given to us by, I believe, the Jerry Amy collection. And if you read it, it says, the grocery store of Dr. William Shaw, grandfather of Gerald Amy, later during Prohibition, a blind pig operated by Sherwood Lee and located just north of the Sherman House.
Oh yeah, that's over on
Some of our locals also had ties to the Purple Gang. My grandmother's brother-in-law was one of them. He would be the guy on the left. And that one. And that one. I think this one too, baby.
For crying out loud.
George B. were married to Anna Selke, and she's in the bottom on this picture. And this is her brother, John, with his brother-in-law, Jack Young, of the Purple Gang. And he was married to one of the other sisters. We used to have to turn out the lights and hide when he'd come to visit. This is just the list of the names of the people. Jack Yount from the Purple Gang, John Selke, James Hunter from the Purple Gang, and Will Selke. Jack and James were married to two sisters, two Selke sisters. They look like they're pretty happy with themselves, don't they? My grandpa even decided to pose with them too. Here's also a picture of Sherwood Lee's home on South 7th Street. There's a secret stairway and a closet that goes down to a full bar in the basement. It was Sherwood's blind pig, or one of them. Someone recently on a house tour there said it's still there.
Yeah, it is.
Sherwood Lee was planning on doing some serious remodeling to his bar on J Street. Here's the same view, like in the 60s, viewing the river down J Street, as we saw back with the horse and buggies. There's a comparison of the two pictures in the view. Looks like they updated a few buildings. But that one, notice that building is the same in both pictures. Mary just noticed, looks like Christmas in this one.
Yeah.
We have a copy of the plans here at the museum that Sherwood had drawn up to make his improvements, I should say. Then urban renewal happened. Needless to say, the plans went by the wayside, and Lee's Bar went by the way a lot of the business, never reopened. You can see where this is where they started tearing down the town. You can see things, there's the post office still there. But this looks like the mall parking lot. And that block is still standing. The following pictures were taken from the barber shop by barber Marv Dietland. I guess it says he must be open. Closed is facing in. See how the building half gone. That must have been a desolate feeling. Now the whole thing's gone. Let's just haul the rubbish away. Now let's go around the block to Burkhardt's. I said across the park, but I was... Burkhardt's didn't have a sign. They didn't need one. Everybody knew where they were. This picture is a view from the 1940s, a frame from the movie. We're in the movies, and you can see, I think that's Porter's Market maybe, and that's the building over there. Okay, there's another view. There's the market. Burkhardt's Bar was originally owned by Lawrence Burkhardt, who passed away in May of 1959. His son Bill, who was 19 at the time, had to take over the running of the bar. His mother was a Canadian citizen and was unable to hold a liquor license. The family lawyer set up a trust so Bill could run the bar, sell liquor, even though he wasn't old enough to drink it. Just before his 21st birthday, he sold to Leo Zimmer and Fred Diener. This is where the farmers and the townmen came on Saturday mornings, and they came to get the local news and gossip, have a beer, play euchre, cinch, cribbage.
So, this one or the one before?
Going the wrong way, Steve.
I had a request.
Oh, okay. Ann Delore used to finish her shopping and come and knock on the window for Babe to come out. He was usually involved in a card game, and he'd throw down his hand and call Art Boda to come and finish his hand for him. This story was told me by Bill Burkhardt, so I know it's true. It was a revolving card game with the men leaving as their wives finished shopping at either IGA or Porter's Market or the meat markets close by. If the fire whistle blew, you better get out of the way. The fireman tore out the door running for the fire hall by the city hall. Lots of funny things happened at Burkhardt's, such as a gun being kept under the bar. Nothing unusual about that except for a game sometimes played. If a man could shoot the top off a beer bottle at the other end of the bar, where there was a men's room with half-swinging door, without spilling it, he got drinks bought by Mr. Burkhardt. On the other hand, if they did spill any, he bought drinks for the entire bar. One time during a game, a man was in the men's room. When the gun went off, he must have thought it was aimed at him, because he was almost out the front door with his pants around his knees. Another true story. An unconfirmed story told that some guy had a friend die who liked to frequent Burkhardt's, and the guys got their friend from the funeral home and stood him up at the bar one last time. Weekend at Bernie's? This was from an old state police book. Funeral home, St. Clair, missing person. Another time, Mr. Lipke was accidentally shot in the leg, so there was a signpost that said no guns allowed. See the bullet hole? Still there today, down at Pepper Joe's. Apparently, according to Mr. Burkhardt, the man with the gun came in with an attitude and nobody knew him. He was a stranger. Like he was looking for a fight. No women were allowed in Burkhardt's either. It was called the Stag Bar in those days. Wives would call the Burkhardt home and ask Mrs. Burkhardt to send one of her kids down to tell their husbands to come home. In July of 1968, an early morning fire damaged Burkhardt's Tavern. The fire began in the basement, and a postal worker on his way to work discovered the smoke coming out of the rear windows. He notified the owners, who called the fire department. The fire was in the basement, but the main floor received heat and smoke damage. This may be the reason for the move next door to the Goldstein building. Izzy Goldstein's store had already moved out by then because of urban renewal. You can see that it's pretty empty in there. And it's just down the street from Burkhardt's, so it was a short move. Urban renewal was well underway, as can be seen in this picture dated developed in July 1969. It was time for this portion of Trumbull Street to be taken down. You can see the library there, and they started doing the curved road around it.
That's the doctor's office.
The next move for Burkhardt's was a temporary one once again. It moved into the vacated Lowe's garage, 414 South Riverside, corner Riverside and Witherell. This is when it was open, when it was vacant. Sam Crawford obviously found humor in this. Management proudly announces there will be no interruption of service during the move. Burkhardt's portable bar, Kleeman and Cedar movers. Next stop, Lowe's garage. We've moved to Lowe's for the winter. So maybe they stopped working urban renewal in the winter, I don't know, because of the weather. Burkhardt stayed in the old Lowe's building until urban renewal caught up. It then moved to the old Vic's Collision building at 119 Clinton Avenue. You can see the Sunoco and some of the other things and Vic's. Mickey Saunders, yeah, Mickey Saunders Hamburger Place, yep. Westrix Light Bodies. Here they are at their final spot. Hopefully they're finally at the end of their moving. It's Kenny and Bill. I have a feeling Sam Crawford might have painted himself into each of these pictures. Some like Alfred Hitchcock, because he's always a guy with a hat. It was later Rochelle's and is currently Pepper Joe's. There's the aerial view. Now on to the Cadillac. This is a very nice painting by Sam Crawford of the Cadillac. In the year 1899, the Cadillac Hotel did not have a bar. They more than made up for it when they did get one. Dancing, partying, pool playing went on with abandon. In its earliest days, it was a really nice place to eat. A newspaper account tells of a train accident up near Yankee Road in the 1920s. It said that some of the injured were put up at the Cadillac House to recuperate. When the Cadillac opened in the 50s, or was in the 50s, it was owned and operated by Sarah and Julian DeMeyer. Maybe some of you remember them. I remember their daughter, Deanna. Is it normal or bizarre to have a bear for a mascot at a bar? A real live bear was housed on the north side of the hotel in a 10 by 10 foot cage. A generation of St. Clair grew up knowing the Cadillac bear. We'd love to have a picture of the bear if someone has one someday. I think this is a late 50s car, so I had one. One source told me there were some pretty good fights there, usually over pool games. Max Johns, a resident of St. Clair, who was born in a house right behind the Cadillac, could remember the hotel in the early part of the last century. It had a huge dining room, said Mr. Johns, and it had the world's greatest cook. We were just kids then, and we called her Ella Cadillac because we didn't know her last name. She gave us cookies and handouts all the time. When it closed, an auction was held to dispose of the fixtures and the furniture. This is an article from the Times Herald. Auction goers mingle with last-time patrons as auctioneer Freeman Glenn sells the Cadillac Hotel's bar, stools, and equipment literally out from under them. Everybody in there trying to get one last drink. Some bought the stools they were sitting on, while others bought them from under someone else. They sold liquor until the bartenders were too drunk to make change. Then they gave it away. When the light fixture behind the bar sold, somebody stood on the bar and cut the live wires to it. Sparks flew and the place got dark. Mr. Jowett from Marysville had a friend talk him into going to the auction just for fun, and he ended up buying the bar. He had to call a relative on the phone, ask him for help in removing the bar from the party. His friends started talking about maybe sometime the next day, and Jowett said, "No, I think we better get it done tonight. It's getting pretty crazy in here." Chairs had been flying, and the crowd was having a little too much fun. The bar went from the Cadillac to Little Dodge Park, then up to Lexington to the Irish pub. Joe had heard part or all of the bar may be coming down to Port Huron to the newly remodeled Connor Street pub, corner of Electric and Connor Street. Yeah. Sportsman. As for the building, the wrecking ball got it too. Our last stop will be the Locust Inn. St. Clair Highway, or Hart Road as we knew it back then. The Locust was located on Dead Man's Curve on St. Clair Highway. It was a roadhouse type of establishment. There's another aerial view of it. Anita Hillis was a waitress at the Locust Inn. Maybe some of you knew her. Advertised in the local paper as the friendliest place around. On the left is Margaret Mamrow. The lady in the middle is unknown, and Fred Mamrow behind the bar, and a couple of unknown customers. Anybody recognizes anybody? Yeah. You can tell me later, or you can tell me now. It's dark, but I'll recognize your voices. Margaret and Fred worked at the Locust before going to the Sherman House. After the Sherman House, Fred ran the bar and Margaret cooked and ran the dining room. They went to the bowling lanes with the sale of the license. After that, they worked at the Cherry Beach Inn. They usually had a band on Saturday nights, and a lot of interesting things happened there. Let's just say it was a swinging type of place. One man keeled over off a bar stool and died of an apparent heart attack. Another friend said her dad was out there one time, and on the way home, his truck was run off the road near the cemetery, and he was robbed.
You know when it changed to St. Clair Highway from Hart Road?
Don't know. From Facebook, we learned from Jeff Sherrill that he remembered hearing stories growing up of his dad, Gord Sherrill, and his friend Rich Patterson getting thrown out of the Locust for being a little inebriated and riding their horses right through the front door into the bar. Crazy times. The Locust is gone now, and a vacant lot stands in its place. A sign reminding us of Dead Man's Curve. Looks really peaceful now. Yeah. Behind the Locust and the Sherman House, there were baseball diamonds. It's kind of hard to see them from this angle, but I know they were there because my dad played there. Coon Sales and Service sponsored a baseball team. And in later years, the 70s and 80s, a bunch of young guys who frequented Burkhardt's played a group of Canadian guys. They alternated countries each year. I even had a trophy. And my sisters think the Canadians still have it.
Let's go get it.
All right. Who volunteers? Okay. This is the Coon Sales and Service team. 1946 state Class C champions. Charlie Hendrick, Bob Bowlby, Bob Tripp, Bud Seneff, Joe Clutcha, Bud Fredericks, Jack McCormick, Lloyd Powley, Jerry Kelly, Dunk Claus, Carlton Krause, who happened to be our priest at St. Mary's, Bob Shaffern, Bob Brown, Jack McCormick, Willie Campbell, and Bernie Kuhn. And the only one left is probably Bernie.
Yeah.
We've covered the watering holes, and now we'll recall some of the characters in town. One such guy was Pike Callan. He owned a gas station near the old water tower. And let's just say he liked to tip a few. One day, while he was a little tipsy, he saw a big guy on the street. He challenged him to a fight. The guy was Fess Parker, the actor who played Davy Crockett on TV. He happened to be staying at the inn. I guess we know who won that one. Another character was Bramy Dam, shown here with Betty Brenner. This is one of the only picture I've ever seen of Bramy Dam. We have a poem written by his great-nephew, David Gillis, and it will be read by his great-niece, Sarah Ferguson Flum. Sarah, where are you?
Okay, gather around, my friends. There's a story I want to tell. It's all about a great uncle. Someone old-timers say they knew well. Few in the family claimed him as kin, but everyone in town knew his name. Even to this present day, people remember Bramy Dam. He had an uncanny appearance. His clothes were in need of repair. He said he once had a regular job, but he couldn't remember when or where. He swept the floors at a local pub, earning enough for his unquenchable thirst. For you see, it was whiskey, wine, and beer that was my uncle's ever-present curse. When Bramy's wife passed to the other side and the funeral day had been set, Bramy had no suit to wear to the wake, so his friends told him not to fret. They took a collection from those at the pub, so Bramy would not be ashamed. But instead of the clothes he said he would buy, it was several bottles of libation he put. It was here in the city of St. Clair, many years ago he did reside, and many of the town's old-timers can still remember how he died. For Bramy, things never did improve. In fact, they became even worse. It wasn't long after his wife passed away that Bramy succumbed to his curse. It was on the banks of the River Pine that Bramy would lift his last glass. He drowned in the murky waters one night. The town drunk had died. Alas. Many still tell me they recall how my great-uncle lived and died. Maybe there's a lesson to learn. Be careful of the memories you provide. I would never have known my great-uncle's life if not reminded when I mentioned his name. For all I know, at the Pine River's edge, it's the ghost of Bramy Dam. Bramy was a great uncle of mine. I didn't know him. I remember my grandma, that would be his sister. Whenever anybody mentioned him, she kind of got this funny face and said, "Oh, him." But his real name was Leonard, and his wife was Susan Lee, and I'm not quite sure what relation she was to the Lee of Lee's Bar, but Sherwood Lee was a nephew of Bramy's because another sister had married a Lee. So there are a lot of connections there. And he was in his 70s when he died. So in spite of it all, he had a long life. And everybody said good things about him too, aside from the audience.
Thank Thank you, Sarah. And thanks, Dave. Then there was the man, Charlie Harrington. Charlie was a handyman who lived and worked at the Cadillac. He worked as a clerk and a porter. Everyone called him Cadillac Charlie. During the cemetery walks that the museum hosts, he's mentioned in every walk and is often inquired about. And that's all they have on his grave. A big thank you to the following who helped out with this program. Images: Todd Bigger, Marv Dietland, Fred Felter, June Bell Ingalls, Mary Kennedy Boda, Nancy Campbell Klug, Brian Moss, Frank Wiss. I took the new pictures. Thank you to everybody that let me in their bars and establishments. Mike Mullane provided us with some artifacts. Several donors to the St. Clair Museum over the years provided the rest. Historical digital imagery and PowerPoint layout, Chrissy DiNardo Gorzen. Stories and help, Fred Arnold, Robin Brisboy Chan, Joe Bailey, Mary Beischlaw Ornsby, who by the way lives in Florida, 84 years old, and her family had a meat market, Beischlaw's. I talked to her on the phone, she sounds great. Bill, Rosellen, and Anne Marie Burkhardt, Betty Brenner Fenner, that sounds funny, doesn't it? And Ron Brenner, Al Kloss, Ann Kloss, Judy Kloss Chauvin, Sarah Ferguson Flum, David Gillis, Chuck Homburg, Jim Jowett, Chris Kleeman, Fred Miller, Mary Pulaski Brown, Paul Pulaski, Joanne Potter Kinsfader, and Jeff Sherrill. And publicity from Jim Block at The Voice, Paul Digman and his crew from Channel 6, and Chrissy for poster design. And anybody I forgot, I'm sorry. We really couldn't do programs like this and many other projects at the museum without the photographers of the past. Gilbert, Smith, Chauvin, Hubel, Westrick, and Pesha. And we must not forget to thank the late Sam Crawford for painting the historical images. Sam frequented the barbershops and bars and sometimes paid for his tabs with his paintings. We are thankful for his dedication, his talent, and his sense of humor. With that sense of humor, we're wondering if he painted the likeness of himself in some of his work. That is quite a remarkable likeness. Cheers to you, Sam Crawford. Cheers to all of you. Thank you for attending, and I'd like you all to stay and join us for some pretzels, ground bologna on crackers, and orange mustaches.